Among the Yupik tribes of Alaska, people speak of enormous beasts burrowing underground, creatures they call Kogukhpuk or Kogukhpuk. As far as I'm aware, this means earth moles, which seems like a weird specification. I mean, one would immediately associate moles with the earth, but I guess they had encounters with different kinds as well. These Kogukhpuks are said to have transformed from muskrats and actually resemble them, but wield 2 long tusks. This is possibly the only authentic depiction of one such beast you can find on the internet. Here, let me cut the ball from the picture. So this very clearly muskrat-like creature with its disturbingly human limbs, visible intestines, and a head that is either grinning with a lot of teeth, or is a weird sideways bird with a beak, which is possibly the very own rabbit duck illusion of the Yupik, inciting heated discussion since time immemorial, and this sentence has gone on for way too long for me to keep track of how it started. Alright, this is clearly a poor depiction of the muskrat at best, but there is much evidence that the basis of this legend is something much larger and ancient, but I'll discuss that a bit later. So these lumbering beasts burrow for food under the earth now, but they once roamed the surface. However, they were deemed too dangerous to humans, and so a shaman banished them to live underground. This was probably good news for the Insarat, extraordinary people of Yupik legends. They too lead a subterranean life and sometimes make snacks out of the Kogukhpuks. While driving them away might have saved a lot of lives, it did have its drawbacks. These beasts tunnel through the earth as if it was water, and as they carelessly dig their caves, they cause earthquakes and cave-ins. This usually happens when they accidentally dig into the shoreline, causing water to flood their holes. There is a documented case of one such incident. The destruction of one George Butler's cannery in 1964 was attributed to the monsters. Regarding other details of the legend though, there are 2 distinct variants. One states that Kogukhpuks are extremely sensitive to light, and if they accidentally surface, the light of the sun kills them. There is only one night during winter solstice when they emerge and roam the land. However, they must be careful, for any that is caught by the rays of the morning sun on the surface will die, with the scorching light leaving nothing but huge bleached bones. It's sad in a way. They were banished to a life in darkness, having only a single night to breathe fresh air and feel the howling wind, and even then, it must be under the cover of night. They can only ever look at the sun again if it is the last thing they see. The other version is even more cruel though. They cannot breathe the surface air. If so much as the tip of their nose penetrates the earth, they will die. One free night definitely seems better with this alternative. The generally accepted explanation for these monsters is mammoth bones found when the covering soil erodes or the permafrost thaws. Those who do not know what these creatures were or how these fossils came to be might rightfully think they belong to huge subterranean monsters. However, there is one more very interesting aspect to this, the part of the legend that tells how these creatures once roamed the surface. It is of a distinct possibility that through oral culture, ancient encounters with living mammoths told by the predecessors of the Yupik survived in legends and were later correctly associated with the gigantic bones, spinning the tale further. While we cannot be certain that it was humans who exterminated mammoths, the tale seems almost allegoric. People killed the beasts. Their remains gradually enveloped by the earth. The creatures survive the tales, but as they surface and their bones are found by the Yupik, their death becomes apparent. Food for thought, I guess. Adding to the assumption though is that 2 of my books also claim that these beasts were also known in Siberia by the Siberian Yupik people, this time spelled as a single word. Apparently, Russian people were aware of these creatures, calling them mammoths or mammons. I had no idea about this when I started my research, but this is where the mammoths got their name from, further solidifying the link between the Kogukhpuks and the prehistoric remains. Neat connection. The Yupik did not have the collective knowledge we can access today though, so they imagined large muskrats burrowing under their feet. But on that note, is even such a creature possible? A rodent-like enormous beast with long tusks digging away? Well, not on Earth, no. When it comes to our planet, or any similar place for that matter, there is a size beyond which burrowing is just too cumbersome to be viable, especially as the primary method for movement. Not to mention that the animal is supposed to find enough food down there to sustain themselves. June. Yeah, don't know much about it, love the giant ferns, but those probably shouldn't exist. I might rip into that one day. I think this might be a prime example of someone making up a monster but paying little attention to how it interacts with its environment, whether its design is fit for the life it lives, what ecosystem surrounds it and how it evolved. Little things like these. Making up fantastical monsters is easy, making up functioning animals is a bit more complicated, but I digress. I do not want to go on that tangent here. So in the case of burrowing animals, size is of a huge importance. Length can be an advantage in some cases, but a muskrat-like creature would not really have a serpent-like stature. However, the higher the body diameter, the harder it is for the animal to move and compress enough soil to create a tunnel that fits its size. Exponentially so. Therefore, the size of a mammoth would be a bit of a drawback, so we'll have to work on that. Although there is one way to go about this that neatly connects legends and a plausible evolution. The fact that the Kogukhpuks were once surface dwellers but were driven to an underground life coincides well with how animals become fossorial. It is believed that the reason some species took a digging approach to survival includes shelter from predators, accessing previously unattainable food, thus carving out ecological niches for themselves, but could also be driven to this lifestyle by harsh weather. Considering the cold climate of Alaska and Siberia, especially during the glacial period, this is as good a reason as any. Additionally, muskrats themselves burrow, although they only dig nests into the banks of streams or lakes, but it's a start. Mammoths, on the other hand, would be hard to turn into subterranean animals. Based on this information, I suggest we search the predecessors of the muskrats until we find a candidate that could sport something akin to tusks. I suggest it, but you clearly have no influence over how this pre-recorded and edited video goes, so... I did go on a fossil hunt on the internet, and it seems that muskrat predecessors is quite an obscure and inconclusive subject. You should have stopped me, really. Apparently there is no clear consensus on how exactly muskrats evolved and which extinct species are most closely related to them. However, it does seem like early muskrats were even smaller with less developed teeth, so that's not good. To increase our chances, we should take a look at early rodents that inhabited that region then. They only need to resemble muskrats after all. Finding ones with tusks or horns wouldn't hurt either. Well, it just so happens that the only known horned rodent, the horned gopher, lived relatively close, on the Great Plains of North America. Both males and females wielded weapons on their nose, and they were also burrowers, most likely consuming roots and tubers. There is only one slight drawback. They were about 30 centimeters. Yeah, they were the smallest mammals ever to have horns. However, we are in the realm of hypotheticals and fantasy, we can make them a bit bigger, I think. Although that would make them worse diggers. Here's what we'll do to combat all these. Let's make it relatively large, bigger than a muskrat. The size of a beaver would suffice, and about 1 meter long body. To offset the drawbacks that come with it, we make the Kogukhpuk only semi-fossorial. During the winter, they hibernate in their underground burrows, but when the weather turns warmer and the soil becomes softer due to thawing, they emerge. They roam the surface, looking for the right plants to dig up and ravage their tubers. However, this also means they'll have to use their weapons a lot more against potential predators, which should find them a lot easier. As a result, their horns would grow longer, almost tusk-like. This way, people would see them during summer, but never during winter, as they would retreat underground, giving some credence to the legends. The fit is not perfect though, we need to stretch the myths a bit to fit around this realistic Kogukhpuk. Although the Yupik would still find mammoth bones, perhaps they would think that the horned gopher Kogukhpuks are merely the juvenile animals, and the remains are the adults. Yeah, not the most convincing argument, but with such specifics, this is the best I can do. Do you have any better ideas? I am not trying to sound sarcastic, I am genuinely curious. Regardless, this is my realism-proof Kogukhpuk. Cute. I'd like to do a bit of an update before I go though. A while back the Loch Ness Monster was requested by Robot Wars Fan 1999, which is going to be the next episode, but it is a huge undertaking, so I'm not even sure how long it will take. I do want to do the creature justice, so I need quite some time before I can properly include every important detail I've come across. Please be patient, it is coming. Also, I'll have a bit of a Halloween special, which is most likely going to come out shortly after this video. I've also been meaning to say thank you for well, the support so far. I never got around to it, but yeah, I am really grateful. It's been a blast talking about things I'm passionate about, and I hope to see you next time and every time after that. Alright, I'm gonna go now. Bye!